Your microphone's right here. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Juneteenth to you. Our inaugural federally holiday, Juneteenth. On behalf of President Sean Huddleston, with excitement and anticipation, we are so delighted that you have joined us today for the launch of the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion, and also to host our participation with you, the community, and IMPD. We're delighted that you're here. We're excited to launch this national center that will do such wonders for not only our community, the Circle City, our region, but nationally. Father Boniface Harding, we're in his gathetorium and we stand on his broad shoulders. And he said, I want to be someone who can walk all among the people. We're missing the boat if we just tell stories. We must give witness. We must give witness. That is what we're going to do tonight. I'm delighted that you all are here, that you took your time on Juneteenth to be here with us, to have your voices heard, and to celebrate the launch of our National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion. We have a brief program tonight, and we're going to launch that program with President Sean Huddleston.
This day is a dream come true in a couple of ways. First and foremost, we are so excited to launch the Martin University National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion with all of our great partners and certainly with you all. Another reason why this is so important today is what happened yesterday when Congress passed the Juneteenth National Independence Day, making Juneteenth a national holiday. It was epic. I mean, that day, yesterday, I had all kinds of emotions, and I was feeling so strong and so happy about what happened. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't let the moment be diminished by the fact that it took 2.5 years for those slaves in Galveston, Texas, to finally learn what America had already known. 2.5 years. From the time that Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st of 1863, well, making slavery abolished on January 1st, 1863. He actually issued the proclamation in September of 1862. Those slaves in Galveston didn't find out until June 19th of 1865. And then it took another 6 months before the ratification of the 13th Amendment, making slavery completely illegal in this country. In fact, there were some states that bordered some of those Confederate states that still practiced slavery because it wasn't officially illegal. So that delay, we can get caught up in that. We can worry about the fact that there's this deficit in time before it actually happened. And delays like that, we know, are not new. I mean, it took 32 years for Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday to be recognized as a federal holiday, not a national holiday, a federal holiday. And it took another 17 years before all 50 states made it a state holiday. So we're used to delays like that. In fact, in 1837, our nation's first historically black college, Cheyney University, was founded, but HBCUs were not federally designated until 1965 with the Higher Education Act. And predominantly black institutions like Martin University were not federally designated until 2008, even though Martin University was founded in 1977 and many others were founded in the late 60s, early 70s. So delays, we're kind of used to that. But what Juneteenth did on that day, in June 19th of 1865, it transferred stolen ownership of our existence and our outcomes. It transferred it back into the hands of its rightful owners. And for that, we got to just give an applause. I think we owe it to ourselves and our ancestors to learn from our past, to maximize our present, and to construct our future. So, Juneteenth, or Emancipation Day, as many of us call it, for me, it's both an arrival and a departure. In some respects, it's an arrival because it's a historic moment in our country that normalizes our desire to celebrate the official end of slavery as an accepted practice in America. But it's also a launching pad. It's a time for us to depart from the ways of the past and move toward our future. It's a way for us to be able to collectively build progress and further damage the systems and structures of oppression. So that's what this National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion aims to do, and why it's important for us to hold our official launch today. Now, some of you may ask the question, why the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion? Why not just the Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion? Why not just the Martin University Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion? Well, we know that the issues that impact and affect racial inequality and inequity here in Indiana and in Indianapolis are not only our problems. These are problems that are permeating our entire country. So we believe that we can be leaders in this space. We believe that we can be examples. We can be teachers. We can show the rest of the world, we can show the rest of the country how it's done. And we can do it from right here, Indiana's only predominantly Black institution. So we're excited to get this going. We're excited to move it forward. We're excited for the work that we'll do together with our great partners here today. We're launching today as a day on, not a day off. We're launching today where we're going to have an important community conversation with our good friends with IMPD and in partnership with the Central Indiana Racial Equity Fund and so many others who are coming together to collaborate for a collective impact. That's what today is all about, and we are so thrilled that you are able to join us today. So to help us get things launched and get things kicked off, it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce or bring to the stage someone who doesn't really need an introduction, someone who I always refer to as my friend, because if we think about our friends are people who care about us. They're there for us when we need them. They certainly provide us with the information that we need, but more importantly, they want to see us rise. And so it is absolutely my pleasure to bring to the stage our Mayor, Joe Hawkson.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Huddleston, for that kind introduction. We are friends, and that's important. And as it relates to our federal acknowledgement and recognition of today and tomorrow, I simply say, thanks be to God. And you all know me, I'm provincial. We were here in the city of Indianapolis way ahead of our federal government. We had scheduled Juneteenth as a holiday before they were talking about it in Washington. So I'm glad that we're leaders in that regard. And I'm glad that they've caught up. I shouldn't have said that. Look, I'm honored to be back at Martin University celebrating both Juneteenth and the launch of the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion. I was here just last month to attend the commencement celebration and the ceremonies surrounding this past school year. What I said then applies here as well. What I said then was at the commencement, commencements are impressive in any year. Today's opening would be impressive in any year. But that it has come to us after so many obstacles and so much turmoil in this past year, it is an extraordinary achievement. Today, our city gains a valuable resource in the NCREI. So many of our city's public, private, and philanthropic institutions have renewed commitments to equity over the past several years. And many of those institutions join with us tonight. From numerous and historic reforms in the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, thank you, Chief, to redesigning the city's commitment to a contracting process that mandates proportional contracting with minority-owned businesses, from the recalibration of the Central Indiana Community Foundation's mission to focus on racial equity, to the appointment of new chief diversity officers at many of our city's largest corporate entities. The National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion can inform and guide these and other efforts so that they have the most impact possible on our community writ large. Our city deeply appreciates the leadership that Martin University has always shown around anti-racism and diversity efforts for Indianapolis. From Father Boniface Hardin's founding of the Martin Center in 1969, down to the NCREI board's announcement today. The leaders at Martin University and its graduates have made our city, have long made our city, a stronger city and a better city. And as Dr. Huddleston can attest, I've said it in this place and others. As Martin University goes, so goes Indianapolis. Because beyond all the policies, all the mission statements, all of the commitments around equity, there is one primary thing driving all of these things. The compassion that we feel for each and every one of our neighbors. Scripture commands it. And by harnessing that empathy, we can and we will make this city a more prosperous city for all residents. In every corner, in every neighborhood, in every zip code. And we cannot stop until that is truly real. That change starts here. That change starts tonight. Let us get on with the task of changing Indianapolis to an even better city, a stronger city, a more prosperous city for every single resident who calls Indianapolis home. So I repeat, thanks be to God.
Thank you, Mayor. I am always inspired when I hear you. Before I continue, I would be very remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge the music that we heard here as you all were coming in. The music was provided by the Kyle Huddleston Trio. And if you haven't picked up the connection between the two, or you had me stop you to say that's my son playing the sax, that was my son delivering it. And I have to say that for a couple of reasons. One is because his mom and grandmother might be watching online, so stay out of trouble. And the other thing is that they might be doing some Father's Day shopping tomorrow. So, with that being said, next we will have to the stage one of our partners here in this effort today. I'd like to bring Jordan Maitland to the stage, who is representing the Central Indiana Racial Equity Fund. Jordan.
2020 was quite a year. At a time when we collectively endured a global pandemic, many of us also grappled with a collective sense of grief, agony, despair, frustration, and anger. As Fannie Lou Hamer said, we were sick and tired of being sick and tired of battling systemic and systematic racism and the doors of opportunity not being opened as wide to some as they are for others. In the wake of this, a committed leadership class of this city said, I too have had enough. I too stand against inequities that divide and prevent each person from manifesting their full potential. Coming to the table, not just with the desire to change the realities of the present, but also with the resources to rectify past wrongs, the Central Indiana Racial Equity Fund was established. The fund was created with 3 goals in mind: improve interactions between the African American community and the Central Indiana law enforcement, reduce African American representation in the juvenile and criminal justice system by providing positive alternatives for education and employment, and increase employment and wealth opportunities for minority communities, in particular, as it relates to matters of criminal justice, re-entry, and police interactions. It is more than fitting we are here today in commemoration of Juneteenth. Juneteenth is part of the unique history of African Americans, a unique history rooted in faith, resilience, sacrifice, and a commitment to making the future brighter than the past. The story of Martin University and the legacy and leadership of Father Boniface Hardin is a similar story, and one significant to the city's history. The fact that we are gathered here today and marking the opening of the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion is a testament to faith, resilience, sacrifice, and a genuine commitment from Martin University, President Huddleston, the numerous community stakeholders, the academics, and of course the students who will be doing the work to make the future of our city, our state, and our nation bright. I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to offer remarks on behalf of the Central Indiana Racial Equity Fund and on behalf of the Coordinating Committee and the Advisory Committee. And we anxiously await all that this effort will provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Next, I'd like to certainly bring to the mic someone who we all know and trust, and that is Chief Randall Taylor, Chief of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department.
Good evening. It is my great honor to celebrate with you today the launch of your National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion. Our community has benefited from Martin University's diversity and fight for racial equality since its inception. So thank you, members and staff of Martin University, for your continued efforts on this journey. Juneteenth has been celebrated in many ways over the years, but this year in 2021, this day of emancipation and freedom is now officially recognized as a national holiday. We're witnessing history before our eyes. We're living the day that many of our ancestors dreamed of, the day that race and equality and equity would coexist. Before the 1860s, our ancestors had faith that one day things would be different. They say beyond the circumstances, they saw beyond the circumstances and beyond their oppression, their turmoil, a hopeful day that oppression would end. Fast forward over 150 years, later we stand proudly on the shoulders of those who fought for that freedom. Being a man of prayer and of faith, my mind immediately goes back to the time of what their faith must have looked like and what it will be for us to continue on this journey. Resilience, focus, inspiration, hope, and communication. These are the things that help continue for all of us to be able to listen and to make the changes that we need to make. We have a lot of work to do. IMPD has work to do. But the great thing is we're here. We're here now. We stand beside you. Not in front, not behind, but beside. We look forward to the changes that will come. Thank you. I don't know about you, but every time I hear somebody say National Center for Racial Equity, it just, I get excited. I mean, do you feel that? Do you all feel that? Like, just say it. National Center. National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion here, not just in Indianapolis, at Martin University. Now, I know, y'all dress nice and you took some time to do your hair, put your makeup on, you weren't really messing anything up. But this is a moment of excitement. So hopefully you all are as excited as I am to get it going. And if you're not, I'm going to bring Keith Graves to the stage, who is our wonderful city county councilor, who's really going to get you excited.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I must take a few moments and recognize Dr. Huddleston, the fine job he's doing, along with his team here at Martin University, which with every milestone, they make me more and more proud that they're right here in our city. Thank you, Dr. Huddleston. I also want to recognize the mayor of the greatest city in this country, Mayor Hogsett. Along with the most courageous leader in law enforcement, Chief Taylor. Thank you for being here. Just a quick hello, and thank you for having me to the Central Indiana Racial Equity Fund and the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion at Martin University. Again, my name is Keith Graves, a member of the Indianapolis City County Council, humbly serving with my neighbors in District 13 on the Indianapolis' east side. I'll share a few words with you here, and I'll give the mic back. Emma Lazarus was a poet and an activist who wrote the famous poem engraved at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. You may recall that phrase. It's a poem for which she's best known. But 50 years before she penned those words, she wrote another poetic line, one that others have adopted in different forms and at different times, but which I believe speaks just as loudly to us today as it did when she scribbled those words down in 1833. Her words, until we are all free, we are none of us free. You may recall that Dr. King adapted the phrase into no one is free until we are all free. And I believe the truth that his statement acknowledges is the same truth that Mayor Hogsett, the Indianapolis City County Council, and now the federal government recognized in their decision to proclaim that June 19th is a holiday. Juneteenth is a holiday. Thank you. Now, I want to be clear. And I'm using the word holiday in that old sense. So we're not recognizing Juneteenth as a day where everyone gets another day off. We recognize it as a holy day, a day that is genuinely sacred, a day that marks a turning point in the history of our nation. We mark it as a holy day, every bit as worthy of the recognition and remembrance as any other holiday in the American cultural calendar. And personally, I would argue that it's actually more worthy of recognition. What day should be more celebrated than the last official day of the practice of slavery in this country? What day is more holy, more deserving of recognition than the day on which the last link and the last chain that bound the last enslaved human being in this country was broken? If Emma Lazarus or Dr. King were correct, Juneteenth is a day when everyone in this country was freed from the sickness that was slavery. I believe broad recognition of Juneteenth is the beginning of broad recognition of the fact that the United States was not the land of the free until that day. Or should I say, the United States did not truly begin their efforts to become the land of the free until that day, because over 150 years later, we're still working and wrestling with becoming a nation where we are all equally free. The legacies of slavery and white supremacy keep us, not some of us, but all of us, still shackled in chains that are no less binding simply because they're not seen. Their impact is manifestly evident everywhere we look. And that's why I'm really happy here. I'm happy to be here because we're not only recognizing Juneteenth, but we're here to celebrate the launch of the National Center on Racial Equity and Inclusion right here at Martin University. At every level and every sector of our society, organizations need to build their capacity to eliminate racial inequities and dismantle systemic racism. Our community and our country need the kind of change the National Center will help drive. The commitments Martin University has made to achieving inclusive excellence, racial equality, social justice, and access and opportunities for all are goals to which we should all be committed. I know I am. I know my colleagues on the City County Council are. I know Mayor Hogsett is. Chief Taylor is. And I know you are. I believe the more committed we are to this change, the more closely bound we are to achieving the goal. The more free we become. And that's not some of us that will be free, but all of us. And the reason why I believe that is because we are none of us free until we are all of us free. Again, my name is Keith Graves. Thank you so much.
You know, the man on that wall, our visionary leader and founder, Father Boniface Harden, founded Martin University under the premise of servant leadership, to inspire, to create, and to advance more servant leaders in our city. Every time I look at that picture, sometimes I look at it and it feels like he's saying thank you. And other times I look at it and it looks like he's saying to me, don't mess this up. Regardless, his visionary leadership was about servant leadership. And I've met quite a few servant leaders in our city, but there's one that stands out in particular, somebody who does the hard work, rolls up her sleeves, brings economic development, social capital development, and others to our city and to the areas where it needs it most. So it is absolutely my pleasure to bring to the microphone Ashley Gervitz, who's the CEO of the United Northeast CDC.
Thank you, Dr. Huddleston, and want to say thank you also to Martin University, their incredible team, which is more of a family. We feel the vibrancy of your work every single day here throughout Northeast Indianapolis. To Mayor Hogsett, thank you for being here, being seen, being known, and serving in everything you do throughout Indianapolis. And to everyone else here, thank you for always stepping up. When hope for some may be absent, your day, your light is just keeping their flame going as well. So with that in mind, I just want to take a moment to echo off of a couple of sentiments of if there are still some that are free, we're not all free. And I say that in the fact of actually some of my early memories. I'm a child of two that are graduates of Martin University. And I remember being the baby of 5, mom working hard jobs, 2 full-time jobs, and she was a student at night. And I probably got the mouth I did and the spirit of Barnabas early, just because we knew that freedom and liberation and lives can be changed no matter their barriers. And so knowing if it's the personal connection, but through now living as a resident here, but most importantly in a servant leadership role for the United Northeast CDC, we know the power of partnerships. And every single day, I give thanks to Martin University to see that the pathways of education, their pathways of walking with students, walking with this community, help others know that it is possible that they can be free, no matter if it is the physical barriers that have been removed, but the internal ones that some have maybe been fighting and breaking generational curses with that. So I share that to say an echo of this great celebration of the national, let me emphasize, national, did I do it right? Okay, cool. The National Center is the work that may be seen in 46218. We all have the obligation of now elevating the work we do on a daily basis now to a national scene. If it's seen nationally, just imagine its impact and the ripple will now make globally. Freedom comes in all forms. Yes, we can clap for that. But I do want to, stand here before you all today and say we, as a community, know firsthand the liberation that happens with Martin University day in and day out. And through a partnership, I just want to spend a couple moments to share with you as well. At 38th and Arlington, so just east of there, 38th and Sheridan, we've been very fortunate to know opportunities have been here, jobs, home ownership, education, degrees. That's nothing new here. Do not be fooled with sometimes what the media may portray, that our liberation has been denied. We have it now, and we're getting it back. But through a partnership with Cook Medical, United Northeast CDC, Martin University, and CICF, and a lot more, we are now taking on a challenge of food disparities. It'd be one thing to say at a corner lot where Michael and Marcus McFarland, they just saw people hungry. And they're just gonna take care of their little block on East 38th Street. But they didn't stop being heard. And I can only imagine just with Juneteenth, as the troops were walking down the streets of Galveston saying, "You're free, you're free." The echo is now Michael and Marcus feel heard. That's something we can celebrate today. Being heard isn't just saying we hear you, but it's putting action behind it. Martin University will be with 2 young Black males, where we already know statistics may have something predetermined for their future. They're breaking those barriers. To know one day that they will own an over $4 million asset of a grocery store in our own community, that alone will not be possible without the great partnership of Martin University. So I just want to say thank you. Now, as they're celebrating with the National Center for Equity and Inclusion, their work is going to see that Michael and Marcus' story of Indy Fresh Market reaches the national level. They are making the curriculum of telling their story. That's helping create another playbook of freedom. And just imagine, if we're able to make the difference and overcome the barriers here in our community, just imagine block by block the difference it can make. Zip code by zip code, state by state. And that's all been birthed through this epicenter of freedom right here at Martin. So again, thank you all, and I hope we continue to celebrate all the great things we can do together. Thanks.
Okay, so I have a confession, a very important confession to make right now. So we have been talking about the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion. And we have a lot of our great students and alums in the room right now, so you know that one of the things that we teach very, very rigorously is the fact that you cannot plagiarize. So my idea was the Martin University Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion. Dr. Catrice Albert, who's here with us, said, why don't we call it the National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion? So in this moment, I'm citing Dr. Catrice Albert so that y'all don't accuse me of stealing her work. Got it? Okay. I'd like to invite back to the stage Dr. Albert, who's going to take us through the rest of the evening, the events that will happen next. Dr. Albert.
Thank you, President Huddleston. And I'm so sorry, I was so excited to get us started. I didn't even introduce myself. Telling you happy Juneteenth and that we were launching our National Center for Racial Equity and Inclusion. I failed to introduce myself, so thank you so much. We are very excited that you all are here to participate in this wonderful community discussion. Thank you again for your participation, for your work, seen and unseen, known and unknown in this amazing community. The partnership with Martin University and the Central Indiana Community Fund and IMPD is very important to all of us. And you heard from all of our key city leaders about how important it is for your voices to be heard. So before we launch into our community discussion, I just want to take the opportunity to thank our steering committee for creating the curriculum that we will have for the rest of our experience in our partnership. So Chief Taylor, thank you so much for allowing Commander Catherine Cummings, Commander Ida Williams, and Captain John Walton to participate with me and Erica Young in creating this partnership between Martin University and IMPD. It is really important that this community conversation help us and this steering committee with our plans that we have in this partnership. What we plan to do is strengthen communities and spark family bonds and our connection with the IMPD. So tonight, what you will do is participate with our counseling students, our master's level counseling students, and Dr. Brian Sturwall in this conversation. They have a set of very provocative and thoughtful questions for you, and we hope that you are willing to be very open with your thoughts, your ideas, your comments, and your intellectual curiosity. So at this moment, I'd like to invite Dr. Sturwall and the master's level counseling students to stand as they are able so that you can see our next leaders in the community doing this work to facilitate growth. Again, what they will be doing is taking you through a set of questions. And so what we want is your voice to be heard in this work that we will be doing throughout the fall into the winter. I heard it once said that social justice is when we intentionally behave like we belong to one another. When we intentionally behave like we belong to one another. So this conversation is really about making sure we strengthen the family, strengthen the community, but strengthen the bonds with IMPD. So I'm gonna ask that those of you who are like at single tables, if you can join in to tables so that we can have fulsome discussions. So, we want to be able to have your voices be heard, and that when you start vibing with one another, more intellectual curiosity, but you never know who may hold the keys to the kingdom. So our little steering committee needs your advice and your recommendations on how to do this well. Our master's level counseling students will go through a set of opening remarks for you very quickly, and they're going to ask you to introduce yourselves very quickly. If they rush you along, don't get offended, because I've instructed them to help carry us to the end of our program so that you are able to get back home and enjoy Juneteenth with your families. So those that are at single tables, if you don't mind just joining in, and then what we'll do is go ahead and get started. Any questions before we launch? Any questions? All right, take it away. Give us the information that we need with your lived experiences.
So let's switch on. So let's take this one. I forgot what we said. Oh, you can turn that way. So go ahead and turn that way.
Okay, okay.
Stop.